Hi and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Let's not waste time because the moment I looked down at my phone and saw 255 missed calls, I knew my life was about to split in two, but the chaos didn't start there. It started with one sentence. A sentence so sharp it cut right through the center of a supposedly romantic evening. You'll never be half the man my ex was. She didn't whisper it. She declared it. It was our fifth wedding anniversary, a Tuesday night, small Italian place, candlelit. I had made a reservation 2 weeks in advance, not because I thought it would fix things, but because I believed deep down that effort could still matter, that if I just tried hard enough, she'd remember how things used to be. But as she said those words, I realized effort didn't matter anymore, at least not to her, and yet I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I didn't even ask why. I just kept eating. I wish I could tell you I stood up and left. I didn't. I wish I could say I called her out in front of the waiter. I didn't. I kept my fork in hand, my mouth full of overcooked risotto, and my eyes locked on a tiny candle between us that was flickering like it didn't want to be there either. She left, just grabbed her coat, muttered something about needing space, and disappeared into the cold. No goodbye, no emotion, just gone. I finished dinner alone, paid the check, even boxed her untouched entree like an idiot, as if she'd come home and suddenly remember I wasn't the man she hated. I walked home, quietly, no tears, just a heavy fog in my head. At 2:07 a.m., I finally checked my phone. Missed call, voicemail, voicemail, blocked number, missed call, another voicemail, then 20 calls in a row from her sister. Something wasn't right. I thought maybe she crashed her car, maybe she lost her phone and someone found it. Maybe she realized she went too far and was trying to apologize. But then, 255 missed calls. No one calls that much unless they're desperate or hiding something. What I didn't know then was that she wasn't the one in danger. She was the cause of it, and by sunrise, I'd find out just how deep the betrayal really went. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the couch like a ghost in my own home, one arm over my eyes, the other still clutching the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Every time it lit up, I winced. Her name, her sister's name, unfamiliar numbers, voicemails I didn't have the courage to listen to. At 4:12 a.m., I finally turned it on, silent, and tossed it across the room. I just wanted 5 minutes of peace. I didn't get them. By the time the sun peeked through the window, I felt like I hadn't taken a single breath in hours. The air in the apartment felt thinner somehow, like betrayal had its own weight and it was crushing my chest. I finally forced myself to check the first voicemail. Her voice shaky, panicked. Cyrus, please, call me back. I need to explain, please. Explain what exactly? That my biggest crime as a husband was not being her ex. That while I was booking dinner, she was busy comparing me to a man she supposedly left behind years ago. Second voicemail. Her sister. I don't know what you did, but she's a wreck. Just call her, man. Third one was from an unknown number, and this one stopped my heart cold. Mr. Dawson, this is Detective Avery from the Brooksville Police Department. We need to speak with you regarding a matter involving your wife, Mallory. Please call back immediately. Police? Why? For a few seconds, I stood frozen in the center of the room, staring at nothing. My first thought wasn't, is she hurt? It was, what did she drag me into now? My hands trembled as I returned the call. I expected the worst. Maybe a car accident. Maybe she got mugged, but I wasn't ready for what the detective actually said. Mr. Dawson, your wife is being questioned in connection with a break in at her former employer's property last night. I blinked. What? She doesn't even work there anymore. That's true, he said calmly, but she still had a key card, which she used. Apparently, sometime after our anniversary dinner, after she left me humiliated and alone at that restaurant, Mallory drove to her old firm's office and entered the building around midnight. Cameras caught her carrying a tote bag in and out, and according to the detective, several sensitive files and a company laptop were now missing. I didn't understand any of it. Mallory was never some criminal mastermind. She was organized, sure, confident, sometimes cruel, but methodical, calculated. She didn't do impulsive, she didn't do messy, so why now? When I asked the detective if she'd been arrested, he said, not yet. She's claiming the files belong to her and that you, her husband, can corroborate that. That's when it hit me. She was trying to use me. Somehow she had roped my name into whatever she was planning. Maybe she thought I'd be too passive to push back. Maybe she figured I'd just nod like I always did and back her up no matter what. But this time, no, not anymore. I hung up and finally listened to the last voicemail she left me, the one time-stamped at 5:38 a.m. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have said what I said. I was angry. But I need you now. I really need you. Please just answer the door. The door. I looked up and nearly dropped my phone. Through the peephole, I saw her, Mallory. Mascara smudged, hair tangled, eyes wide and red, and behind her, two officers standing silently. The knock was soft, almost polite, like they were delivering a package, but nothing about that moment felt ordinary. I stood behind the door, heart racing, my fingers gripping the handle like it might electrocute me. I wasn't afraid of the police. Not exactly. I was afraid of whatever chaos Mallory had dragged to my doorstep, and what role she planned to cast me in this time. She knocked again, then whispered, barely audible through the wood, Cyrus, I just need to talk. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was staring through the peephole, watching her bite her bottom lip the way she used to when she was lying. Behind her, the two officers stood with tired expressions and stiff postures, clearly not expecting trouble, just another domestic thing. Probably figured I was a coward, hiding from my own wife. Well, maybe they were right. I didn't open the door. I walked away, back to the living room, back to the couch that still smelled faintly like her vanilla shampoo. I sat there with my head in my hands while the knocking turned into silence. And then, finally, the sound of retreating footsteps. I watched from the window as Mallory spoke to one officer, hands flailing dramatically, while the other kept glancing up at my apartment window like he knew I was watching. Eventually, they got in their cruiser. She didn't. She just stood there on the sidewalk, alone, arms crossed, her breath visible in the morning chill. Then she took out her phone. A few seconds later, mine buzzed on the coffee table. You can't ignore this forever. That was the text, and she was wrong. Ignoring her had become the only thing I was good at. But that message confirmed something I had suspected since dinner the night before. This wasn't about regret or guilt or even love. This was about control. She didn't come to apologize. She came because she needed something, and when Mallory needs something, there's always damage left behind. I didn't respond. I powered the phone off. For the first time in months, I took a long shower, a real one, not one of those numb, rushed routines just to feel clean. I stood under the hot water like I was trying to melt myself down to nothing. And when I stepped out, I looked in the mirror and realized how much of myself I had lost trying to be enough for someone who measured me against a ghost. An hour later, I got a call on my landline. Yes, I still had one. Never thought it would come in handy until that moment. It was Detective Avery again. He sounded tense. Mr. Dawson, I'm going to be straightforward with you. We have reason to believe that your wife accessed private financial documents, not just from her former employer, but from you as well. I nearly dropped the receiver. What do you mean from me? She attempted to use your shared bank access to transfer funds tied to a dormant consulting account registered in your name. The transfer was flagged. We're still verifying what she had access to and when. My mouth went dry. That account hadn't been touched since before we were married. It held maybe 12 grand, nothing huge, but it was mine. From a freelance deal I did before I met her. I had honestly forgotten it existed. She hadn't. I need to know, the detective continued. Do you want to press charges? I didn't answer right away, because in that moment all I could think about was the way she looked at me that night across the restaurant table. That smirk, that superiority. You'll never be half the man my ex was. She was right about one thing. I wasn't like her ex, because I wasn't going to let her burn me and walk away smiling. I gave the detective my answer. Yes, I want to press charges. And that, as it turns out, was the first domino. Because once I opened that door, not the one she knocked on, but the legal one, everything she had kept hidden started unraveling. It wasn't just my money she was after. It wasn't even just the break-in. Mallory had secrets. And one of them was about to destroy more than just our marriage. The moment I agreed to press charges, it felt like my entire spine stiffened for the first time in years, like my body had been folded in half, begging to be enough. And now suddenly, I was standing up straight, even if my heart was still somewhere on the floor. I didn't know what would happen next, only that I couldn't go back. That night, I stayed in a hotel off Old Hollow Road. A cheap place that smelled like damp towels and lemon air freshener, but the Wi Fi worked and the bed didn't have the shape of our marriage carved into it. That was enough. I didn't hear from Mallory that evening. No texts, no calls, but her silence didn't feel like surrender, it felt like a warning. She was never the type to retreat without a plan. That woman could weaponize guilt in her sleep, and I knew, deep down, this wasn't over. The next morning, Detective Avery called again. This time, his voice was measured, clipped. We executed a search warrant on a storage unit registered in your wife's name. It was flagged in the financial records. Mr. Dawson, you need to come down here. I asked why. He just said, because there are items inside that legally belong to you. I didn't even know she had a storage unit. The drive to the facility was surreal. I passed streets Mallory and I had walked together. Places we used to stop for late night milkshakes, bookstores she once claimed felt like home. Every streetlight felt like a reminder that I had been blind for too long. When I pulled up, Avery met me at the gate. He didn't smile, just gave me a nod and walked me through the corridor of metal doors until we stopped at Unit 117. The padlock was already cut. Inside, I didn't know what to expect. What I saw stopped me cold. Boxes, dozens of them, each labeled with my name, or more accurately, parts of my name. CD on one, Consulting 2018 on another. It was like she had been cataloging me behind my back. The detective gestured toward a filing crate near the front. I knelt down and opened the top. Inside were copies of old contracts I'd completely forgotten about, projects I had worked on years ago, before merging with her business. Some of them included my tax records, my personal invoices, even my social security number printed on forms that should have never left my locked drawer. She's been collecting these, I muttered, flipping through more folders. She's been repackaging your work as part of her own intellectual property, Avery said quietly. Several of these documents have your signature forged beneath her company's name. My mouth went dry. This wasn't about hurting you personally, Mr. Dawson. This was a long game scheme, financial identity fraud. She's been using your dormant credentials to get access to grants, licensing, maybe even clients. For years, I'd assumed I was just the disappointing husband who didn't measure up. But Mallory hadn't married a failure. She'd married a foundation, a blueprint. And when I stopped being useful emotionally, she pivoted to using me legally. I wanted to scream, but instead, I laughed. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt so absurd that someone could slice you apart so methodically while kissing your forehead goodnight every day. She said I wasn't half the man her ex was, I said mostly to myself. Turns out she only needed me to play half the role anyway. Avery gave me a look, half pity, half disbelief, and then he showed me the final thing. It was tucked in the back corner, under a blanket, a framed photo. Mallory smiling beside a man I had never seen before, younger, flashier, hand on her lower back, the date printed in gold across the top, April 22nd, 2021, our wedding anniversary. The frame had a message engraved on it. To new beginnings, finally free. I blinked. My legs felt numb. Do you recognize him? Avery asked. I didn't answer right away. My mouth barely moved. But deep inside, something finally clicked. I had never seen that man in person, but I'd seen fragments, reflections in sunglasses on her Instagram, a voice once on speaker she claimed was a podcast, a perfume she wore that wasn't hers, and I never had the nerve to question. I had been erased slowly, replaced in silence, and now the man who had supposedly ruined her life years ago was back, and somehow I was still part of the plan. That photo wouldn't leave my hands. Even after the detective walked away to take a call, even after I sat down on the grimy concrete floor of the storage unit, like someone had pulled the floor out from under me, I just sat there, staring at that golden date etched into the bottom of the frame. April 22nd, 2021. Our wedding anniversary, a day she'd claimed she wanted to unplug from the world. We spent it in a cabin by the lake. No Wi Fi, no cell reception. She said she wanted it to be just us. I remember feeling guilty for even suggesting we bring our phones. We cooked together that weekend, laughed, made stupid s'mores over a tiny camp stove she borrowed from a coworker. She was so present, So how the hell had she managed to be in two places at once? The answer came later that night. I returned to the hotel completely hollowed out. I hadn't spoken to her since the morning she showed up at my door with the police, but I knew she'd reach out again. She had to. She always did when the walls began to close in, and sure enough, just after midnight, a knock came at my hotel door. Not the front desk, not law enforcement, her. Mallory stood in the hallway with her hair tied up in that loose knot she wore on lazy Sundays, trying to look small, innocent, like the woman I married still existed somewhere behind her exhausted eyes. She was holding a paper bag of takeout from a diner down the road. Chicken tenders, my favorite. The scent twisted my stomach. I figured you hadn't eaten, she said softly. I didn't invite her in. She walked in anyway. She sat on the edge of the bed like she'd done it 100 times before and started unpacking the food like nothing had changed, like she hadn't detonated our life, and smiled through the smoke. When I didn't sit next to her, she finally looked up at me. Are you going to say anything? Sure, I said, my voice flat. Where were you on April 22nd, 2021? She blinked just once, but it was enough to confirm everything. She knew exactly what I was referring to. Don't do this, Cyrus. Don't do what? Ask why you were posing in a photo with a man I've never met on the day you supposedly wanted to be completely alone with me. She didn't answer. She folded the takeout bag methodically, like it might disappear if she creased it right. That cabin weekend, I continued. You left that morning to go into town because you forgot marshmallows. Said it would be a surprise. You were gone for 3 hours. Came back with a single pack and a smile like nothing happened. I needed closure, she whispered. Closure, I laughed. It sounded bitter, unfamiliar. Mallory, you took a framed photo with him. That's not closure, that's celebration. And then, like always, she pivoted. I didn't want to hurt you. He was just someone I needed to see one last time to be sure of what. Her answer, silence. That was when I realized she'd never left him. Not truly, not emotionally. He was always there, beneath the surface of every argument, every compliment she never gave, every time she rolled her eyes at my efforts and compared me to some invisible standard I could never meet. He was the phantom she measured me against. And now I knew why. I can fix this, she said suddenly, standing. You don't have to go to the police. I'll return everything. I'll delete the files. I'll write a letter saying it was all me. Just don't press charges, please. But it wasn't about the files anymore. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the years. The years I spent loving someone who saw me as a stand-in, a placeholder, a quiet, safe man she could mold into whatever she needed at the moment. And when that failed, when I started slipping out of the role, she discarded me like a script she never planned to finish. I picked up my phone and showed her the photo again. Tell me his name. She hesitated. Then finally she whispered, Elias. Elias. I'd heard that name before. Once. On her birthday last year, when her phone lit up during dinner, and I caught a glimpse of a message from someone labeled E. She told me it was her cousin. I didn't question it. I never did. And now I had no idea who Elias really was, but I was about to find out. When she said his name, Elias, I felt it echo in my ribs like a dropped coin in an empty hallway. It wasn't just a name, it was a key. And once it fell from her lips, I couldn't unhear it, couldn't unsee the way her mouth trembled like she was mourning something still alive. I didn't yell. I didn't even flinch. I just nodded, took the last bite of cold food she'd brought me, and waited for her to leave. I told her I was tired, that I needed space. She nodded too quickly, and kissed the top of my head like we hadn't just torn the last threads of whatever fragile illusion remained between us. The moment the door clicked shut, I opened my laptop. Elias, Mallory wasn't the kind of person to be careless with her past. Everything she ever did was strategic, and I was done being the only one left blind in the dark. I started digging. I didn't have a last name, but I had a face. He's from the photo. There, I ran it through every reverse image tool I could find. Nothing came up. I even combed her old social media posts, which had conveniently been wiped clean of any male presence that wasn't me. But it didn't take long before I found something strange, an old LinkedIn connection. A man named Elias Rhodes, graphic designer, lived in our city 5 years ago. His account had been inactive since 2021, the same year as the photo. I cross-referenced the info with the name of the firm Mallory used to work for before we launched our business together. And there it was, one archived newsletter, buried in a cached version of their employee blog, a team photo from a charity project. Mallory on the far right, Elias on the far left. So they weren't just exes, they were co-worker, creative partners. They'd pitched campaigns together, traveled for client retreats. There was even one blog post where she quoted him directly. Elias is the only person who can finish my sentences before I start them. The date, 2 months before she met me. It all felt like a sick puzzle I didn't know I was part of until someone else had already finished the border. And then I made a mistake. I sent him a message. It was short, polite. Just a hey, I believe we have a mutual acquaintance. Would love to ask you a quick question. I expected nothing. I expected silence. I got a reply in under 10 minutes. Cyrus, I was wondering when you'd reach out. My blood ran cold. I hadn't given him my name. I asked, how do you know who I am? He responded instantly, because I helped her pick your ring. I stared at the screen so long I forgot how to blink. My brain scrambled for any explanation. Some joke, some mistake, but the more we exchanged messages, the more my world came apart like loose threads in a storm. He told me they'd never actually broken up. She'd told him she needed to play the long game, that after her career hit a wall, she needed someone stable, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions, while she built herself back up. That was me. I didn't think it'd last this long, Elias typed. She always said she'd come back, said she was only marrying you on paper, to set things up. I thought she was bluffing, until she didn't. According to him, Mallory had kept in touch, sporadically, cautiously. She had visited him 3 times in those 5 years, always brief, always with a sense of guilt, but never regret. He admitted he was tired of waiting, said he had moved on, sort of. But then she called him again a few weeks ago, wanted to talk, said things were unraveling. I asked him what she said about me. He hesitated, then typed. She said you'd never leave her, that you were weak, that no matter what she did you'd forgive her if she cried hard enough. That was the first time I cried since this entire disaster began. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because I realized she was right. I had been weak. I had swallowed every lie, every manipulation, just to keep the image of something she had never even tried to build. And now I had to choose. Stay quiet, let it all fade, move on quietly, and let the world believe it was just a marriage that didn't work out, or rip the curtain down and finally show everyone who she really was. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent the entire message thread to her boss, her current one, the one who trusted her with financial accounts and client relationships, the one who didn't know her past, or the fact that she was under investigation. And I didn't stop there. I sent it to her sister, her mother, and then I posted it to our shared business website. Not the messages, just one sentence. Mallory, ask Elias what he told me. Then ask yourself how many more lies are worth keeping. Within 20 minutes, she called me 47 times. I didn't answer. I didn't sleep that night, not because of guilt, not because I was second guessing my decision to tell the truth, but because I was waiting for the impact, that low, slow rumble of consequences finally coming to life after years of silence, and it came fast. The first text was from her sister. What the hell is going on, Cyrus? Then her mother. Please don't air this publicly. Mallory is spiraling. Then her boss. We've temporarily frozen her access. We'll be reviewing all current contracts. I didn't reply to any of them. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. You don't scream at the fire after your house is already burned down. You just stand there watching it smolder, wondering why you kept ignoring the smoke. By noon, I was packing the last of my things from our apartment. Well, my apartment now. I'd already talked to a lawyer, filed a restraining order, locked down every account, and had the locks changed. Everything that once felt like ours now felt like contaminated space. I walked past the framed wedding photo in the hallway, still hanging where she left it, and didn't flinch. The smiles looked like strangers caught in a lie. Then came the knock. Not at the door this time, at the lobby window of the leasing office, where I was signing the final paperwork to have her removed from the lease. I glanced up. Mallory. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man I didn't recognize at first. Tall, wide shouldered, sharp suit, expensive watch. The kind of guy who looked like he spent more time in gyms and networking events than real life. She was clinging to his arm, not the way someone leans on a lover, the way someone hides behind muscle, and then I recognized him. Elias. I knew it from the way he glanced at me, half smug, half cautious. He hadn't come to apologize. He hadn't come to make peace. He was here to back her up. Mallory stepped forward. Her tone was cold, clipped. You think humiliating me was going to get you closure? I didn't respond. I signed the lease update, slid the paperwork to the manager, and turned to leave. She followed me out into the parking lot, Elias right behind her. Cyrus, she snapped. You just nuked my career, my reputation, over what? Old messages? A photo from before we were married? I finally turned to face her. You were never done with him. Not on our wedding day. Not on our anniversary. Not when you were lying to your clients with my name. You didn't just betray me, Mallory. You used me. Elias stepped forward, puffing up like some watchdog. Back off, man. You've said enough. I looked him dead in the eye. This is between me and my wife. But Mallory wasn't anyone's anymore. Not truly. She crossed her arms, suddenly composed. You know what? Fine. Ruin everything. I'll rebuild it. You're always going to be the pathetic guy who got played. At least I walked away with something. I didn't even have time to ask what she meant, because just then her phone buzzed, and when she looked at it, her face dropped. I wouldn't check your bank account today, I said calmly. Your access is frozen. You forged my signature, remember. I signed an affidavit. The firm will be pressing charges, and your business license already flagged for review. She paled. Elias looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. His jaw just tightened as Mallory swayed slightly on her heels, like the world had just shifted beneath her. I kept quiet for 5 years, I added. I loved someone who never existed, but today I love the silence more. And then I got in my car and drove away. But I didn't go home. I had one more place to visit, the old lake cabin, the one she said was her favorite place in the world. I hadn't been there since our anniversary, the anniversary. I brought the photo I found in her storage unit, her and Elias, framed, smiling, and I burned it in the fire pit out back. I watched the flames consume the wood and the glass and the edges of their perfect poisonous smiles. It didn't fix everything, but it was the first honest warmth I'd felt in a long, long time. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. It was cold that morning, not just in the air, but in my bones. The kind of cold that doesn't come from weather, but from years of pretending you were warm. I arrived early, dressed in a suit that hadn't seen daylight since my father's funeral. But today wasn't about grieving. Today was about reclaiming what was mine. My name, my peace, my story. Mallory walked into the courtroom 20 minutes late, flanked by an overpaid lawyer and wearing that same detached expression I'd seen during our final days together. Elias wasn't with her. According to the court clerk, he'd refused to testify, said he was done with the drama. Figures. She glanced at me once, just once. I gave her nothing. The hearing moved fast. The judge was stern and unimpressed with her confusion about the financial records. Her lawyer fumbled through pages of explanations, none of which addressed the emails, the forged documents, or the audit trail that traced every unauthorized transfer directly to her login credentials. Then came the moment I didn't expect. The judge turned to me and said, Mr. Dawson, in light of your cooperation, transparency, and documentation, the court finds no fault on your part. Your financial identity has been restored. Your former spouse is hereby restricted from contacting you, your place of work, or accessing any joint property without legal consent. It was over, just like that. But the true ending came not with the judge's gavel, or the final paperwork, or the apologies from her former firm that rolled in afterward. It came later that afternoon, when I stopped at a diner on the edge of town, same diner where Mallory had once brought me cold chicken tenders in a last-ditch attempt to manipulate her way back into my good graces. This time, I was alone. I sat in a corner booth, ordered a slice of pie and a cup of bitter coffee, and for the first time in years, I didn't check my phone once. And as I sat there, I realized something. Mallory had tried to write my story for me, tried to make me the forgettable chapter between exes, the filler, the man too mild to matter, but what she never counted on was that I would finish it myself. I'm not the same man I was when this all started. I'm not weaker. I'm not bitter either. I'm clear. And clarity is the one thing no one can steal from you. Life moves on. It won't be easy, but it will be mine. And honestly, that's the best ending I could have hoped for. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If something in this journey hit close to home, or if you've ever experienced a moment where everything changed in an instant, drop it in the comments. Whether it was a betrayal, a turning point, or a quiet win, I'd love to hear it. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and follow along for more real stories like this, right here on Reddit Confessions. Until next time, stay honest, stay strong, and never let anyone else hold the pen to your story.